can you all please turn off your cell phone? Something ringing somewhere. Pull out and turn it off or put it on silent, please. Sorry.
I don't want you yelling at me. I fell to a very low point in my life after being #1 in the world, where I never hated tennis so much and I wanted to quit, rebelled against myself and said I don't deserve to quit.
As much as the water problems somehow get solved for the urban areas, villages suffer. We had a well in our own house. Grandma would never use that water because it was really salty, heavy, hard water.
I took out a $40 million mortgage. I started building my school in the most economically challenged area of Las Vegas. And I wanted to prove that, we fail children, they don't fail us.
Be alert 100% of the time. It's not that you have to ace it. You just do a better job than the rest of in the field.
I want to talk today about when you have money, when you have fame, when you have the things everybody is looking after, how can you share them? What can you do with it so it can bring equity, justice into this world? So for that, I have wanted two of my friends to join me. So I'll give you a little bit of a background. I met Ravi Reddy almost 2 decades ago, like 25 years ago. And we met where he was a trustee of a foundation I was involved with. And as a part, I moved from technology to venture capital to philanthropy. And I felt one of the things in philanthropy in US especially was that the Indian community was not well connected to each other in their giving. We each give to our village, our city, or whatever, but we don't have us coming together to give en masse, so we make changes en masse. And to do that, you need to have less personal ego, and you should be able to go within a group, which is what we were creating. And Ravi was one of the first people I met. But what I also found with a lot of the Indians is we have a lot of entitlement when we give. When we give, we feel, have you noticed I have given? Will you tell everybody I have given? Will you put me on the stage and give me an award to show that I have given? Which is fine. It is the first generation behavior. We just are getting our wealth. My generation went there in the 80s where we started with nothing. And for the first time, we have a lot of wealth. And so we don't know how to give yet. And it's perfectly fine. So you have to manage that. So it is extremely delightful for me to have somebody like Ravi who would write a huge check, never ask, where are you putting my name? What are you doing for me? And say, what can I do? And that is to me, the sign of a great person. And so then they become a friend for life. So you get involved in many journeys. It's not your NGO, my company, your company. Can we do something happen? And that's what I think we've been privileged is we have 200 to 300 people who just give without asking questions. It's the only conference where the sponsors do not get a stage time. You get a stage time if you have a great story to tell. And the great story is not about how financially successful you are. It's about what are your learnings so others can learn from you. So we are born out of TED, and I feel that as a next generation TED, we should take it to places where we tell the untold stories and we capture that. So with that, what we wanted to do today is, yesterday you heard Andre Agassi on the stage, and we talked about his sports career and with his education, pursuit, etc. And I've thanked Ravi for bringing Andre to us. And today what I wanted to do is I wanted to have Andre and Ravi in conversation with me to talk about, we come up with all kinds of titles. We said perfect doubles. It's because I really believe that we can achieve things in this world if you collaborate. Things don't work just on individual journeys. And two people who have two powerful journeys, what does coming together mean? And that's what we wanted to explore today. And also the bigger conversation here is, if you have it, what can you do with it? So that's a larger conversation. And I'll talk for a bit, and then we'll open it up for questions from you. One request, no statements, questions, like 30-second questions, otherwise the mic will be cut off because we want to have as many questions as possible, as much dialogue as possible. With that, I would love to have Ravi and Andre with me.
Thank you. Hey, thank you so much.
Welcome, Ravi.
Excuse me.
Maybe you can take this off.
This looks good. Don't you?
I know it looks good, but camera, we don't want too much distraction. So, yesterday we were sitting, when Andre came, I said, oh, should we talk about this? Should we talk about that? And he's like, why are you stressing so much? I said, my only stress is before starting a conversation. Once we get on stage, no stress. So now we are no stress. We're just going to have a chill conversation. So, Andre, today is, as I said, slightly different conversation in terms of you're known as a sports legend, the good boy, the bad boy, somebody smart enough to marry a woman smarter than you, and all that stuff, which we agree. And let me tell you, half the people are here to figure out how to get to Steffi through you. So, including me. So, so what I thought today we'll talk about is your life outside tennis. You are somebody very unusual for a sports person who started a foundation in your 20s, the Andre Agassi Foundation. It takes a certain audacity to say, I'm going to have a foundation. Most of the people feel, oh, I'll work all my life, and when I get to some place, I'll have a foundation. I have a big company, I'll have a foundation. I mean, even at day one, we said, oh, there'll be a foundation. We were like, we're making no money, making huge losses, but we had a foundation. But I'm curious to see, first of all, what made you do that? And what were some of the first things you did when you had the foundation?
Wow. Well, thank you for having me again, and thank you for having a much smaller room too.
Yeah.
It's quite the space yesterday.
Yeah.
So I probably have to give a little context to how I got into education or why I cared about giving back, and I think it had to do with my lack of choice in my life. So who would have thought when I wrote my book in 2009 or when I released it that the greatest controversy would come on page 1, where I said that I hated what I did, with a dark and secret passion. And people had a hard time believing it. It was quite the journey in tennis. I was the youngest of 4. My father, a very intense man, used to introduce me as a future #1 tennis player in the world. So just a little bit to live up to.
No pressure.
No pressure. Got sent away from home at 13 to an academy in Florida where it was no adult supervision, children, teenagers raising each other, a bit like Lord of the Flies with forehands and backhands. And as a result, there's a great deal of disconnect that I felt, and that origin was a lack of choice. It was never my choice, and I resented how much tennis seemed to matter, in our family life. And the only way out was to succeed, and fear can be one hell of a motivator. And as I sort of started achieving, winning titles and money, and there was a lot of confusion. Parts of it felt good, but I still felt disconnected with it. And I thought to myself, well, geez, getting to #1 has to be ultimately what makes me feel good about what I'm doing. And when I got to #1, that was the start of a real spiral in my life, because I absolutely felt nothing. I was let in on a dirty little secret that I still got to do everything I've done day after day to keep proving it. So I fell to a very low point in my life after being #1 in the world. I got to a place where I never hated tennis so much, and I wanted to quit, gave myself permission to quit, and then rebelled against myself and said, I don't deserve to quit. I've wasted so much talent, and I fell to 140 in the world. And at that moment, it occurred to me, it was a bit of an epiphany. Epiphanies don't change your life, but what you do with them can. I had an epiphany that maybe I didn't choose my life, but maybe choice is an illusion, right? How many of us really choose our life, where we're born, who our parents are, what our strengths and weaknesses are, but does that stop me from taking ownership of my life, from choosing to choose my life, from finding my reason for being good at something that that I hated, and that's what I set about doing. And when I got home from another disappointing week on the road, I saw a show in 60 Minutes, KIP program. It was a Knowledge is Power program. It was a charter school operator, two guys who were rolling up their sleeves. They were educating children in the most impoverished neighborhoods, and they were actually changing the trajectory of these children's lives. Children who really didn't have choice, right? Not children who could bitch about being number one in the world at something, And so literally this was it resonated so much, what felt like days, probably took a few weeks. I got my charter to build my own school. I took out a $40 million mortgage, personal mortgage, and I started building my school in the most economically challenged area of Las Vegas. It is the fifth largest school district in America. People don't realize how big it is. And I wanted to prove that, we fail children, they don't fail us. A child trusts until someone or something teaches them that trust is dangerous. So that's what got me started in education, and it's been quite a journey since, with a lot more to say about it.
Yeah. And Ravi, you kind of had the other side of an experience in terms of you've been to US, you've come from a very, successful but modest family in India, you moved to US and you become an entrepreneur, you become wealthy, and then you start giving back quite a bit through other organizations, and then you decided you wanted to do something about one problem, So tell me about how you decided what problem you want to solve and why.
By the way, thank you, Lakshmi, for getting us on the stage. I'm not the guy who gets on stages at all, but she worked on me for quite some time before I...
And I told him yesterday when I called him on the stage, I didn't tell him ahead of time I was going to call him on stage, because otherwise he would have told me 50 reasons why not to call him. I had no patience for argument. I said, I'm just going to do what I want to do.
By the way, there's one thing that Lakshmi does not mention, something that she has done 20 plus years ago. She started this digital equalizer program, and being that she was at Intel at that time, and she figured out the whole program, and today that is now in over 25,000 schools here in India.
Yeah.
So she was the So when you meet people, you first of all have to like the person. 2, you have to like the idea. And then 3, you have to have the trust that that person will execute it. And
Sorry, one second, Ravi. Can you all please turn off your cell phones? It's it's something ringing somewhere. So please reach in, pull out, and turn it off, or put it on silent, please. Sorry.
I don't want you yelling at me.
So
I'm already getting a reputation.
So Lakshmi had all 3, so to me it was like a no-brainer writing those checks for the digital equalizer program. Yeah. So I just want to appreciate what Lakshmi has done over the decades. And we kind of off and on kept up with each other. So coming to your question, I'm only one generation removed from a farming family. So born and brought up in Hyderabad. By the way, I should say Hyderabad State, because a lot of people may not know. Some may. Back when India gained independence in 1947, it took a long time for India to be brought together as one country. People forget that. So when it came to the south, Hyderabad State, one of the richest states in India, was ruled by a Muslim king, the Nizam. So he had zero desire to be in India. He wanted to be part of Pakistan. Now, mind you, this is a landlocked kingdom. Then he says, I want to be independent. So he kept writing to the British government to stay independent. Of course, it took, as typical in India, it takes forever, right? So eventually it was 1950, and then another 5, 6 years later. So in the meantime, my dad, being a civil engineer, was working in Raichur. That's where I was born. So I'm a son of Karnataka today. So just a little factoid there. So being an engineer, he was around construction of dams, roads. Then finally he was assigned a task to run the Hyderabad waterworks, which was my first exposure to water. I used to visit along with my, by the way, I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, so I was the spoiled brat of the home. So I tagged along with my dad and mom wherever they went. And whereas my siblings were in school, college, in higher grades and medical school, engineering school. So I had so even till today, they tell me that I'm still a spoiled kid.
Yeah.
So being in water was something that I didn't think about it at that time. We used to visit filter beds, all the water reservoirs around the city. And then you go to the village. We used to go practically most summers, especially when you're young. You had the luxury to go with mom and spend several weeks, sometimes more than a month. What I realized that as much as the water problems somehow get solved for the urban areas, cities, and towns, villages suffer. Villages suffer from really polluted, contaminated water. I mean, we had a well in our own house, in our village, but grandma would never use that water because it was really salty, heavy, hard water. So we couldn't even take a bath with that. So the servants had to go across to the other side, get the water, boil it. So fast forward for me is I'm a big believer in doing one thing, but doing it deeply. So, and somebody told me that, and I couldn't tell them exactly how, but they said, look, you're a guy who only want to dig an inch wide and a mile deep. I said, look, I don't know about all that. I can dig an inch wide, but I go 10 to 100 miles deep in one issue. So water connection is from that history. The second thing is my dad, we were one of 2, I guess, big families in our village. So my grandfather, obviously people used to come for advice, guidance, and all that. And the other, his cousin, was the other big family. So their children, so they wanted to build a temple. Whereas my dad said, look, I'd rather build a community center for the village. And being an engineer, he felt that we needed a septic system in every household, which we didn't have at that time. As you know, in the villages, they didn't have it till 70s, even maybe even 80. So what my dad did was he devoted his time and energy towards civic projects for the village. And eventually, our village got the President of India Award, and he pretty much started the charitable trust in his parents' name almost now probably close to 50 years ago. So I'm not unfamiliar with giving. It's just a giving with a purpose. So I felt that the water issue was such a widespread across the country. Even today, 2024, 70% pretty much of our population, rural families are more than 2/3, and they still do not have access to safe water. So that was really the reason I picked that one, to scale it.
And so today you have over 500 villages where it's a very interesting model of you put a RO plant and then you hire an entrepreneur to take care of it, and the water is sold at very low price, and the entrepreneur continues. The thing that was amazing to me about this is 10 years later, they've been at this more than 10 years, even the first centers they've started are still fully functional. That means that something is working, the entrepreneur is involved, etc. And, so taking off on that, Andre, in terms of the infrastructure involved to keep something going. I wanted to talk about, you started your foundation and you chose education, etc. What was the structure you had to put in place? Just tell us today how many schools you have.
So I built my one school in Las Vegas, and
Which year was that, your first one?
it opened in year 2000. Took me a few years to build. And I had 1,200 kids in the school, and I had over 3,000 on the waiting list. So given my tortured perfectionism of a childhood and background of being measured in front of the world against somebody else, I saw that as being twice the failure I was the success. So I needed to figure out a way to expand, to shorten the lines. And I was actually pretty lucky that I was an 8th grade dropout, because I wasn't an educator, I wasn't an operator, but I did facilitate this dream for these children. But I was facilitating this dream by stealing all the best practices across the country with the best charter school operators, the top 15%, because they overachieve their district peers. The rest don't, for many reasons. And so I thought to myself, I facilitated this dream. I'm taking things that are already being done. Maybe there's a way for me to facilitate their growth, right? Because what I recognized was, you see, a charter school in America can't access public dollars to build their facility.
Maybe you want to explain a little bit about a charter school.
Yeah. So a charter school is a private-public partnership, right? So you could go open a school up. You go get a charter from the state. They give you basically the permit, the license to be a charter operator. But they don't give you the money to build your school. So you have to incubate in church basements or boys and girls clubs. And if a child goes to your school, the money allocated to the child follows the child to your school. So your way of educating is to get a lot of kids as quickly as possible, but you're in temporary spaces. Yeah. So it's hard to get a lot of kids in the temporary spaces, because every time you expand, you have to move and you lose kids, right? So it's a kind of a turning over of this activity. So I was saying, well, wait a second. If the issue for the best-in-class charter schools operators isn't the software, it's not the teachers, right? Teachers don't get into teaching for fame or fortune. They get in because they want a learning-friendly environment to impact the child's life and to teach them. If it's not the children who need a quality education, because we're failing at that, it's certainly not parents that don't want that for their children. The issue for a charter school operator is the facility themselves, right? Because they have to incubate and grow over time. So if you have 50 kids in a class and that state gives $10,000 per child, that's $500,000 to educate these kids in a free space. Then you have 100 kids and the metrics start growing, but now you need space. Now you go lease a space or you have to build a space, and you need a lot of philanthropic dollars to do it. So what I said we should do is put together, not wait for government, not ever think that philanthropy can scale, as important as it is to give. Giving ends when people run out of money, right? Giving ends when the people giving you money choose to give it somewhere else, right? So, but one thing we can still do is innovate, right? We can still innovate the private sector. And it was my belief that if you could bring a private sector solution to a real daunting societal issue, then you not only have scalability and sustainability, as you mentioned with Ravi's water, the villages, that the first one is still operational, but maybe there's even opportunity where you can then continue it in a real exponential way. So I put together a real estate infrastructure fund that went to a private sector business or investor and said, don't give me your money, invest it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the best-in-class operator. I'm going to see where they want to expand, because they know where the need exists. I'm going to build their school on day one. I'm going to focus on construction so they can focus on
Software.
Instruction, right? So on day one, I build the school. Let's call it 800 children. And let's call it a beautiful school, environmentally friendly, beautiful school. 800 kids, 10,000 per child, that's $8 million of revenue. Now, instead of playing landlord in their life and saying, you live in my building, it's like, no, we let you incubate, we let you stabilize, and then we go through the Texas and bond market, and we refinance for you out and give you a purchase power to buy back the school for a price that satisfies the like-minded investor that I brought in 2 years earlier, the person that says, I'm not looking for huge returns, but I do want to see social change. So as a result, I like what you're doing. It's the right thing. And maybe they get CR tax credits, or maybe they get work in the community. So now all of a sudden we start building these schools, and then they start owning them. So then we're out of the school business, but I'm providing the facility. So with that model, in the last 10 years, I've deployed about $1.3 billion and have built 130 schools across the country in the most challenged areas for the kids that are most neglected. So when you talk about how not just people coming together can change things, when you take industries and you take stakeholders,
Yeah.
and you bring them together and everybody sits at the table for a solution, the change is powerful.
And and Andrea, I must say that there is very sophisticated finance involved in this. So
So
there
you
is,
want me to slow it down? No, she's the smartest person in this room. Thank you. You
There
thought that's a compliment.
there is, because there is a social angle,
Yeah.
there is a financial angle, there's an investment angle. So
Yep.
it's not just like I'll build a school and bring people in. It's a interdependent model,
Yeah.
and it's also a circular model.
Yeah.
I do this and then I get out, and the next set of money comes in.
Yeah.
I do this and get out,
Yeah.
and the people who have invested are also making money.
Yep.
Right. So how did you come up with that?
Well, I mean, certainly not by myself. So I tracked down somebody who had a great deal of experience in inner city development, right? And I basically I was turning into an evolved philanthropist. I was saying to myself, we have to figure this out. So I wanted to go find a recovering capitalist, right? like my good friend Ravi here, right? We need to meet in the middle.
Correct.
Right? So I found a gentleman, Bobby Turner, from Southern California. He had great deal of, and I knew he was on the board of a different charter thing, and we basically locked ourselves in a room and said, can we really convince, the private sector the merits of investing in this? And I thought we could do it in 6 months. He thought it would take us a year, and we were both right. It took us a year and 6 months. And we ran into, you want to hear something fascinating? We ran into 4 kinds of investors. We ran into the unionist, we ran into the capitalist, we ran into the communist, and we ran into the realist. So the unionists said, wait a second, every time you build a school, you're taking a job from our constituents, and they hang up the phone, right? The capitalists said, we love what you're doing, but you're leaving a lot of money on the table. What we need to do is take all these schools, we need to roll them up, take it public, create a REIT, and it's like, well, wait a second, we're not doing this to ride the back. The communists said, we love it, we'll do the whole thing, to which I'm uncanny with this. If you know me, you'll know this. I'm not only not scared to ask dumb questions, I don't care what's on the line. I need to know the answer, right? So I leaned in, this is a CIC, and I said, I just have one question. Why would the government of China be interested in taking this entire fund focused on infrastructure, in education, in America for the children that are being ignored? And he said, with all disrespect intended, Mr. Agassi, he goes, your country is indebted to our country by a great deal and a lot of money. And nobody sitting at this table is going to be alive to see that paid back. So we're counting on you to educate your future in order to pay back what you already owe us, and you're failing to do that. So we're actually want to make this investment hedging our investment we've already made. And that's when I responded, and I say, and I mean this, thank you, with all disrespect intended, no thank you, we can solve this. And I was committed
That
to doing
is long-term thinking.
Yeah, that's a true
Yeah,
story.
right, yeah. No, I think I really want to point out that I think it's important. Sometimes we feel philanthropy is all heart and we shouldn't take any money. Or people say, I put the money, but I want the maximum returns. Or, somebody says, no, the whole thing should be free and funded by someone else. But the real answer is somewhere in between, that you need to bring the recovering capitalist and the evolved philanthropist into it together. And Ravi, talking about that, so far, all the 500 schools are either your personal wealth or your friends or corporates that have come in, etc. And we talked about this, but this to really get to, I mean, the numbers are amazing, that to have a water station in a school that will support it for the rest of their life is about $6,000. And to put it in a village, it's say about $20,000. And once you invest that, or $16,000 or something, once you invest that, it's taken care of for the rest of the time. It's a great story. Now, so far what we said is we go to a company and say, give me $20,000, etc. But what we were talking about is a little different of how can $10 make a difference. So let's talk a little bit about the next journey we are on.
So, Lakshmi, a couple of things. Talking about, we should never look at this as charity in that sense.
Correct.
We are trying to make the quality of life for every family, whether they are in the cities or in the rural areas. So the way I approach is, how can we take this problem and solve it in a way, both from an economic standpoint and then have a lifetime sustenance to it. A lot of programs get announced, by, governments, central governments, state governments, and I've seen them all because the state liked our model, the way we are approaching it. They gave us 10,000 villages to set up the water purification center. Now, do you folks know how many villages we have in India? I mean, rural? Yeah, so close to 600,000 gram panchayats they call. So let's say about half of them need this like immediately with great urgency. So it's not a sustainable way to deliver a solution with government largesse where everybody is expecting it to be free. Water gets to be very political in many parts. So the solutions which were always put in place, they last for a year, 2 years, and then. So what we do is simply, we operate as a micro utility for that village. The village is a full participant in it, and they physically operate it, but we enable them. And we enable them with few fundamental. One, it should be operational for a minimum of 10 years. Now, I could say 20 years, but then their vision and they'll just. So 10 years, at least it's a digestible period. The second thing we say is that it has to have, from an operating cost, be breaking even. There's no profit, there's no loss, but it has to break even. So we figured out that an average of about 35 paise per liter, but it's usually in 15 to 20 liter cans that people come and they pay for it. The families pay from their pocket. Now, if some families can't even afford that, which by the way, these days, majority of the families can afford it. So that was an important element. And the thing is to be accessible. We are not building these fancy buildings and looking pretty, for these centers. So we locate them right in the center of the village so that any family can get to it within minutes. So that was an important element, because a lot of times we find that some villages, they don't want it to be in the Harijans colony. They don't want. But I said, forget all that. This has to be centrally located, and generally people like. So these elements are very much part of the program, and then, but majority of our funding came initially from my private foundation, because it took us first 5 years to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Then another few years for people to understand it so they can write those large checks for villages. The villages cost a little higher because of the capacities of the, and the schools generally they don't necessarily charge. And we just do it. By the way, they're probably more than 500, 600, 700 now. So focus is on that. Then we said to ourselves, and a lot of corporates are coming now to write law. And by the way, even corporates, we don't want this 1 year run around, and we said the minimum should be 3 years and ideally 5 years. So we want them to understand, because we want to create impact reports, assessments, and it does take that long for people to understand the benefit of this. So then one of the things that when Lakshmi, you and I were talking about it, how do we, because the size of the problem is such that we need limitless amount of capital for this. So the capital has to be provided by people like us. I mean, for you folks. Like, it's not that it has to be thousands of dollars. It could be $100. It could be 50. By the way, 1,000 rupees or 200 rupees suddenly is a lot of money for the families there. Because what we are delivering is for really 35 paise per liter. Imagine you're buying a bottle of water for 10, 15 rupees, right? The same quality of water, the rural families are enjoying it for 35 to 40 paise. Can you imagine? And that's sustainable for a lifetime. Why won't you want to help that, right? So what Lakshmi felt that I should take this to a much larger givers who can give 100 rupees, 200 rupees, and that feeds a family for a year or at 6 months, depending upon the... So I feel it's a very powerful idea. We want to do this. We haven't done it so far, but hopefully with your help, we'll try to get it there.
No, and the idea you were saying, if we had a crowdfunding platform, say, and there's the trough says $6,000, and you could have, 6,000 people give $1, or, somebody can do a birthday party, somebody can do a lot of things. But if you have a lot of small participants and they know where the money is going, because technology-wise, we can show them. If this jar is full, here is the school it's going. If trough is full, here is where it can go. A lot of times we don't give because you kind of think, where will this go? But if they can see that what you give carries you further. So I just want to, in both the models, in which there's a very sophisticated financial model, in the other one, there is an opportunity to use technology, the digital technologies, to get the small things in. I want to talk to both of you a little bit about, there is philanthropic activity. And there's also, one of the things I believe that in Hinduism, we talk about reincarnation. And reincarnation is you die and then you come as something else. And they say you do good in this world, so you come as somebody better. But I think our forefathers had something better in mind. What they meant was our ability to reincarnate in the same lifetime. Can you die as one thing and start your life as something else? And what good can you do by multiple births? And so both of you have had that multiple birth thing, or from a sports to a philanthropy to other businesses. It's not just one business. And I'm very interested to know, Andre, now from tennis you moved to another sport, pickleball. So tell us a little bit about that journey. Like where are you in that, in another? And the other thing, in both of your case, the reason it's connected to the conversation about giving is that if they make more money, what's going to happen? It's going to go back into the charitable trust. So we hope you both make lots of money, because I don't know how to make it, but I know how to spend it. So I'm just looking for people to give me money. So, Andre, I'm interested in this new avatar of yours in pickleball, not just as a player, but what are you thinking of it as a business?
Yeah, fair enough. So I love it because at this age, with what I put my body through, the rotational aspect of tennis comes with a lot of pain. I can do it once. There's this great country song in America, and the lines are, "Not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was," right? So I can get out on the tennis court and think that I'm a genius for the day, but then I pay the price for a week. But so pickleball really interested me right when I played it, because obviously tennis is the pinnacle of racket demand, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally, all the above. Skill. But I picked up a paddle, and it was really easy, obviously, because it was more simple. But then I realized my body wasn't suffering, and I could still physically get out of it. And then I started watching how generations can come together on it. I started seeing, our family when they came over from Germany, or we had different levels, and like Steph and I could never say to our family, do you want to go try to play tennis today? Right? It's like, you can't do it. You can't do it. It's like, it's going to take you a year before you enjoy yourself, But we could say, do you want to go try to play pickleball? And then all of a sudden, it's not intimidating. People pick up a paddle. They're willing to try, and then they get better every 10 minutes, whatever level you are. They get better. And they're like, oh, I'm getting better. They experience. So it brings community together. It brings, families together. It brings generations together. It brings skill levels together. So I see it from a business perspective as an incredible participation game, right? Do I think it's going to take over TV? No. Do I think the professional level is going to, the imagination of the sports fan? I wouldn't bet on that. But here's what I know. 30 million people play it in the United States, growing here too, by the way. Many of you probably know it or play it yourself. Yeah. But 30 million, and it's still at the infancy because so many people haven't discovered what it's going to add to their lives. So I believe in it from a growth perspective. So now when you start talking about proximity and you start talking about spaces and land opportunities and how you can convert certain parts of tennis clubs that are struggling financially and make 3 courts inside 1 court, now you have 12 people coming to play something they love, and then that club, so it's also good for tennis, right? It's good for everybody. We can all play nicely in the sandbox. It doesn't cannibalize each other. People that play pickleball don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
People that play tennis sometimes want to put the racket down and go see how it's done, right? It's like, so there's 2 different forms of engagement. So I've gotten involved. One of the things I'm doing here, I've gotten involved with this company called Duper. Now, Duper is a rating system, right? Because this is sports at its infancy. So when you think about how you start to look at it, you have tens of millions of people are going to play it, upwards of, say, 100 million, maybe even more. So you go, okay, what do they need? What would help them, the ones that are going to participate? Well, one of the things that really sucks about pickleball, it really does, is that if you get an hour to go exercise and to play, you have to trust what somebody's telling you on what their level is, because if they're not kind of close to you, you're not going to maximize. You could still help somebody, or somebody could teach you how to improve. So this rating system is sort of the lead rating system that helps all these participants be able to say, well, I'm ranked at a 3.9 or a 3. So like I see opportunity in scale. I see opportunity in facilities. I see opportunity. I don't know. I'm not a genius, right? Like I might lose at this bet or that bet. But I want to lose doing the right thing, and doing what I believe in. And, business is easy. It's people that are complicated, right? You just want to connect with the right people. You want to have a good vision. You want to believe in something that isn't work. And then you want to try to find the overlapping synergies and opportunities. And I think with pickleball, it's participation numbers. And I think it's real estate and community facilities, right? There's so much you can do with that.
I mean, the thing I was surprised about is how much it's getting popular in India. And in US, actually, when I'm in US, I stay with my friend Sukhi Singh. She converted her tennis court in the backyard to 2 pickleball courts because she said now, all her grandkids, everybody who comes, a lot more people can play. Tennis is most of the people are watching. And I certainly wouldn't want to be his nephew saying, hey, you want to go play tennis with me? That's not going to happen. So I think it's great. So it's, as a business also, it's interesting for you in pickleball.
I think anything that has the potential of that kind of growth has opportunity and possibilities. And at the end of the day, what you're bringing to the table is more exposure to something you believe in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm not looking to change my life with pickleball from a business perspective.
Yeah.
Pickleball has done enough for me. It's changed my life from a participation perspective.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that there aren't overlapping synergies that could have, exponential return on investment.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about both of your journeys of partnership, and I'll talk about different partnerships. So Ravi, you have actually chosen to work with your family. in this, in CPW, your brothers are involved, your nieces are involved. While there is professional help, you work with family a lot. How has that been? You have an older brother that runs the operations, and is it okay working with family? What are the benefits and not? Why did you choose to go that way?
So Lakshmi, only my brother,
Yeah.
who is a retired U.S. Army military officer, he left, he's an engineer, chemical engineer, has 2 master's degrees in the US, somehow decided to join the US Army, and then he retired at a relatively, in there, you can retire at age 55, when you're serving in the armed forces, So
Okay.
one of the things that I asked him to help me is to build a very strong back-end operations, and that's what he's good. Now, mind you, he is used to contracting billions of dollars for the US Navy as a civilian. After his Army career was completed, he chose to continue being with the US government, and he was a fairly senior level contracts administrator for the US Navy, for the Pacific Fleet. And average size of his contracts would be $500 million to up. So I said, I need this. So use your skills to figure out how the 35 paisa per liter can break even for every village.
Yeah.
Because the capex is mostly donated, almost all. I mean, 100% of the cost of the equipment and all that is a completely donated or granted. So there's no cost to the village for that. But the village has to put up the room, the house, I mean, the little thing to. But from an operating, that is a very fundamental philosophy. Is it has to break even. So with that being said, he put the processes in place. He recruited the team to be able to deliver the services, the maintenance services and training services, because you're training the operators, you're training the technicians, and then you need to educate the families also how important it is to use the water regularly. It's not like the day you're not feeling good, you don't drink polluted water. So with that, he took a challenge upon himself, and he, being in the US since he was 21, he rarely visited India.
Yeah.
Rarely. Because he had no business to be in India. Whereas I was going back and forth for the software technology company or whatever else was going on in my life. So he planted himself and figured out, and that took him a bit. So that now stays, that which can scale. See, that's an important element. Even though you start small, you always have the vision to be
Scale.
that we can do 10,000 centers. They're all micro utilities. They have their own unique challenge. So I believe that is one. So there's only one brother
Right,
who's
yeah.
involved. Now, from a family perspective, they kind of know what I'm doing. They'll write a check here and there, but they're not completely engaged. They're proud of what we're doing. It's just that. And when we started it, my dad, um, obviously encouraged it. But his point is, why do you need to charge that money? It should be. I said, Dad, that's fundamentally the problem. If the moment it's free,
Yes.
it'll fail. So, of course, eventually he was convinced. So mom was in a different picture. She says, in this country, when somebody is giving, like your dad gave away things, there are 100 people sit in front of the house so that he for charity. So that's a nuisance also. Yeah. So I said, Mom, that's true, but that's what we do. So ultimately, for me, was beyond just the family. I have good friends who support the cause because they understand it. And then you take examples of the successful programs which scale, like yours, the digital equalizer. The one that Andre was talking about, his has scaled tremendously, and it's impacting the inner city children. quite positively. So I believe that was my choice. I mean, could
Yeah.
have chosen 9 other things. There's not a lot of things that you can choose, but I believe in what I'm
So I'm
doing.
going to ask the last question to you before I open it up to everybody. This is something I'm very curious. It's a very personal question, Andre, is that you said long time ago in your book that when you watched Steffi long time ago, you wanted to marry her and then went through a bunch of things and came back. And now you have an amazing relationship. You're competitors in some way, but you're co-opting also. What is it? What is it you felt that this partnership is going to work? There's some inkling you had, even though she was way out of your league. You had some inkling that this would work. What was it?
I had a safety insurance. If it didn't work, I get half. So in America, you get half if somebody leaves you. So there's always an. Yeah, it's a great question. How would I answer that? Here's how I would answer. I would say, if you are self-aware enough to understand your blind spots, to understand your weaknesses, not just your strengths, and to be really objective about it, I think you gravitate towards people in your life if you had their strength, right? If you had, so I watched her from a distance. I knew what she went through because I lived it. I mean, we lived the same life, even though we didn't know the particulars. I know she was raised early to be the best in the world. So was I. I know the challenges of everything that the sport demands. And I watched her do it so differently than me, you know. She did it with grace, with dignity. You could tell when she wasn't at peace, but her lack of peace never came with any hurt to anyone around her or to. She was always so good with fans, with media, with opponents, with peers, but she was doing it in a skillet, right? I felt like I had a capacity, but then I didn't, you know. So I envied and appreciated and respected, and you know, the way she went about her life from a distance, knowing how difficult it must have been internally, and then you know, her legs didn't hurt either. Oh, sorry, was I just thinking that, or did I say it? I don't know.
It's okay.
I
You wrote
said
it. You wrote it very loudly also.
No, she's beautiful, and yeah, well, that's the best win I've ever had in my life is when she said yes.
So has she had an influence on you? Have you changed a lot?
Oh yeah,
Well, actually, we see the change in you. Have you changed her a lot?
yeah. Have I changed a lot?
Her a lot.
Oh, I think we both define success in life by being fully human, fully alive, and continually growing. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's how we define it. But, you know, let's say from more of a 5,000-foot perspective, she's taught me and teaches me to talk about something long enough to know what you need to do. And then if you're talking, you're not doing. So let's put some verbs to our discussion here, and so she's taught me how to be a lot more focused, calmer, less reactive, and I think I've helped her feel safer to let more of the world appreciate who she is. You know, I think I see her spreading her wings in ways that maybe a few years ago, even a couple years ago, let alone 25 years ago, you know, that she might not have.
Yeah.
You know, and you know how you know you've been married a long time?
You can know what the other person is thinking? Or?
No. When your wife gives up sex for Lent and you don't find out till Good Friday. Oh, sorry, I thought that was just a joke. I mean, it's serious.
They're waiting for these pearls of wisdom, and then you come up with a joke, you know. It takes some time for people to react.
If she did that, we'd be divorced for sure.
You know, yesterday we were joking, we had robot Ria on the stage, and when you ask a question, like, and we are backstage, we're like hyperventilating, is it working? Is it working? So I'm like, this is how humans should react. When somebody asks a question, wait, and answer is like, we're like just all so busy, like want to talk to each other. So maybe we should all be like Ria. So I'd like to open it up for questions.
Andrew, we always knew you have a great sense of humor. You proved us. I have a question for you. You were always trained to be a tennis player, so you kind of knew when things were not going right, what would be the right strategy. But you were not trained to launch a foundation, or in fact turn it into a massive, incredibly successful enterprise with 500 schools. So what it took, besides being passionate and having a 40 million personal mortgage, to the skills, strategies, and tools you had learned as a sportsman to launch this foundation, and when it got going a little difficult or you had hurdles, to overcome those hurdles?
It takes, I'd say, vulnerability. It takes vulnerability. I talked briefly on this yesterday. Being vulnerable has risk, but it's essential for growth.
So you just go to people and say, I don't know how to do this, help me, kind of
Well,
stuff.
if I don't have any shame if I'm asking for somebody else, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially if my intentions are that, I'll beg with the best of them. But, and vulnerability is one's capacity to be wounded, so to be disappointed, to be let down. So just you build a muscle that tells you I might have lost, but I got better, so it wasn't a loss because now I learned and I grew, So I think there's a muscle that gets developed that keeps the perseverance there despite how you define success. I don't go into anything anymore in life with a predetermined idea of an outcome because that's just expectation, and expectation is disappointment waiting to happen. I try to be a lot more engaged in the process and have my own, in the present time, my own capacity for feeling convicted about something and allowing myself to follow those ripples. If that makes sense.
Sorry, somebody had a mic. Okay.
Yeah. Andre, you're known for hitting countless aces in your tennis career. You faced the toughest tennis players in the history of tennis. That said, what's your recommendation for the entrepreneurs here in consistently hitting their aces in progressing their startup journey?
Yeah, I think we've been talking about that. First of all, I got aced more than I aced. So let's start with that metaphor of truth, right? So that in itself you can take a lot from. If you look at,
I think you made more noise with the aces you made than you got, so people notice it more.
yeah, yeah, but I was looking to be 51% better, than my opponent, and I was like a good casino in Las Vegas, 51% advantage, keep the lights on all day, and let them play, because eventually it's going to go your way. So I knew I could create the 51% by controlling all my controllables better than my opponents, right? And that means in the quiet, that means far away from the lights, that means training, that means resting, that means eating, that means practicing, it means 1,000 things. And if I knew I was doing it a little bit better, if I knew it, the sports you're lucky because you get immediate feedback. Sometimes it doesn't feel lucky, but it's a blessing. You make a decision and you suffer the consequences and you learn. Or you make a decision and you get rewarded and you build, right? You don't always have that luxury in business. Sometimes you don't know, right? So you have to be even more committed to controlling your controllables better than your competitors.
Yeah.
Andre.
Andre, I'm a big fan. I read your book, Open, probably 15 years ago. I tried to look for it. Last night, scrambled, couldn't find it. But I remember a story about Boris Becker in your book, how you found which direction he was going to make his serve. Would you mind recounting that and to this audience?
The serve in tennis is an interesting thing because it's only shot you control yourself, right? Everything else is affected by what your opponent does, the pace they give you, the height of the ball, the the position in the court, all of that your opponent has a say in. But the serve, nobody has a say in. So as a result, people end up practicing their serve in a silo a lot, repetition, hours and hours and hours. But when you're practicing it, you're not getting the immediate feedback. You're just thinking about hitting your spots. And, so sometimes in going through your repetition, you can develop tendencies that you don't even realize that you're developing, right? It can be something as simple as, when I want to hit the serve bigger, I exhale more. Or it could be something as simple as, when I'm going to slice the serve, I'm going to vary the toss because I like, it could be little tiny things. And what I recognized in playing Boris, early on, he beat me the first 3 times we played, and then all of a sudden I went, holy shit. Like he was, I don't know how you remember Boris, but he had this real this real robotic kind of, and then he'd get to here and he would stick his tongue out, and it's like, why is he sticking his tongue out? It's weird. So his tongue would go up the middle, like towards his nose, or it would go to the side. So what I recognized, what I discovered is when he would put it to the side, it meant he was cutting the ball. So in the deuce court, it was wide, and in the ad court, it was up the middle. And then when he put up straight, it means he was coming with pace. So it could be body, but I stopped middle because body I can still cover. And in the ad court, that meant body or wide because he's going through the court. He's not breaking it away. So the hardest part about returning Boris's serve wasn't actually returning. It was actually making sure that he didn't leave knowing that I knew where he was serving, right? It was hard. It was hard to hide it, right? So I would always make sure he ended matches with 27 aces, but unfortunately he lost 7-5, 6-4. You know what I mean? Like that would be the ideal. but the best part, that's a bad way to say it, but no, the best part was when he retired. We went to Oktoberfest together, and his wife was with him, and we're having a beer, and I'm like, should I tell him? And I'm like, yeah, it can't hurt. I mean, 1 beer, I said no. 2 beers, I said, I got to tell him. I got to tell him. So I did. I was like, hey, Boris, by the way, your tongue and, and he looked like a cat thrown in a room full of dogs, right? And his wife starts cracking up. I mean, she starts laughing. She goes, you don't know how many sleepless nights where he's saying to me, oh, he's like, he reads my mind. It's like, and she's like, yeah. She's hitting him on the Oktoberfest going, he read your tongue, It's like, yep, but then like a good German, he just put it aside and pretend it never happened.
And you said it much, much, much later when he couldn't do anything about it.
I mean, I just want to add something that Andre talking about. See, the thing about anything that you do, you have to carry all of your senses. People talk about body language, but it's much beyond that. You have to be alert. See, starting a business, competing for customers, you have to be supremely alert.
Details, right?
And tennis, there's an immediate feedback. You lost the point, lost the game, lost the set, lost the match. That's instantaneous feedback. And you have to improve on the fly, within seconds, fractions of seconds, right? So in business, as much as you would think that it is a slow, glacial pace compared to sport, my suggestion is be alert 100% of the time and keep practicing it. It's not that you have to ace it. That 51% statistics, it's a fact. So you don't need to be killing for your competition or customer. You just do a better job than the rest of in the field. And that's an important element. And I want to add one more thing with Andres. I first saw Andre play when he was 20 years old. He lost a match which he was incredibly favored to win. And he lost to an unknown player, 19-year-old. Pete Sampras. At the end of the match, Andre was asked on court. Now, mind you, he lost badly, 3 sets straight, gone,
Is this
like
the
that.
finals of the Open in 1990?
US Open Finals 1990. That was the first time I watched him play. The answer he gave immediately in my mind was, this kid is so unique in the way, the poise. Now, mind you, you're working hard since you're 13 years old, and you had the chance of your lifetime to win a slam at the US Open. That's like pretty much, so, but his poise and his answer showed the wisdom in his young age of 20. So I feel today he's
What did he
Yoda.
say? What did he say that?
He said, in a good way, in a good spirit, saying that with the president, saying, I just got mugged as a straightforward New York mugging. Something like that. So,
I was like, how do you explain a New York street mugging? I can't explain it. You just saw it. You explained it to me.
So, but it instantaneously, for me was, this kid is not just being a cool kid and being a heartthrob of all these millions of girls out there, but he also has a good, good presence and good wisdom in him. And now he's Yoda. So I feel that proves my point.
Okay,
Are you calling me ugly? Are you calling me ugly?
I want to take your
Wise.
permission. We are over time, but I did say I'll do 2 questions, and I want to respect that. So you both ask, and then I'll have him answer.
Okay.
Ask quickly.
So, yes, I can do it in fast speed. So, Ravi will talk about water a lot. Artificial intelligence was first written in 52. Now I know when Andre applied his intelligence, the practical application of AI, the Andre intelligence on Pete Sampras. So I get that now. I want to know about branding. So I worked for Mother Teresa for 8 years. We used a brand to get schools going, getting people out of poverty into education and getting them going. But she never used a brand as a way to stand on the stage and accept a check from anyone. You'll never see a photograph of Mother Teresa taking a check from anyone ever, because she never said, do it for your purpose, but don't do it otherwise. How is the brand of yours impacted, and how much are you leveraging it? Because that's the powerful aspect of what you're doing in building your schools.
A lot of people would like to do more good, but the excuse is, well, they can't because I can use my brand. Okay, the most glorious work one will ever do is the work that has an audience of one. So you can define success as a number, but do it to your own peril, because you're not living to the most of yourself. If you look at somebody else and conclude that, well, they can do it easier, or they can do it better, or it doesn't change in my mind what responsibility or opportunity sits on your shoulders. So if you want me to be very sure, could I have done all the things I've done to the scale that I've done it without my brand or public brand? No way, no way. But you know what? I envy somebody that does sacred work without an audience. I envy that. There's nothing about me sharing my message to you, being here, that I would take over just not losing sight of the person in front of me, right? But here's the good news. I get to do that too. Yeah. I get to do that too. I'm always with somebody. It might be my wife, it might be my children, it might be a waiter. I'm always with somebody, so I don't lose that opportunity. And nor should not having a bigger opportunity be your excuse. And I know you're not saying that. I don't mean to be personal with it.
No, I think it's last question.
Okay, 30 seconds, 2 questions. So, great to know about this entire initiative of building schools. have you any plans to do this in India, or it's already been done? So that is question number one. And two, quickly I'll finish. In which language you usually speak with Steffi?
The second one is a quicker answer. We speak the language of love. And I'll also be quick with this. In building all my schools with the great operators, they share the same central nerve center, which is early childhood literacy and English language, second language learning, right? We build prisons in America based on how fluently you can read by the grade of 3. So I have built and put together with many others a company called Square Panda that is a technology company that is focused on this particular issue. It's scalable because it's tech, and my hope is to provide it to as many people in the world as possible, where literacy and learning English language as your second language is transformative. And that's pretty much everywhere. So I'm thrilled to be attempting to do this now throughout many states here in India.